I'm going to talk first a little bit about what's special about this law school, and then go on to where studying law here can take you as a career. Probably the most important thing about studying law is that you are going to become part of a law school when you come here. It's different from just taking a few courses. You're signing up to something which is much more broad and more general. Law school is a living community full of activities, people editing journals, people going to moots, arranging for external speakers to come in and talk, people volunteering or interning in our centres, people working in the whole mass of things that our wonderful law society does. What pulls those things together into a whole of the law school community is a very strong sense of values, culture, and priorities in this place. It's not just another university department. This is a place with a strong culture, a strong set of values, and strong priorities, which I guess I summarize in that phrase, connecting law to justice. For us, law isn't just about rules, not just about abstract statements by judges, a means to an end. The university's motto, you may have seen on some of our advertising material, is never stand still. What that means for us is that we don't rely on what was achieved in the past. We don't rely on prestige. What we do is asked to be judged on what we're doing now and what we're planning for the future. This is a law school which, throughout its relatively brief history, has set the pace in Australian legal education. What has been developed here in terms of interactive teaching, internships, clinics, and so on, is taken as being pretty much the gold standard in Australian legal education. But we're not leaving it at what we already do. We're moving on in important ways. If you come to us in 2013, I know some of you are a bit younger than that, but the students who come next year will be coming at a very exciting time for UNSW Law, because we will be launching our new curriculum. What we've been doing over the last year or so in building the new curriculum is looking at the way in which the realities in the world of law and lawyers' work have been changing. We've been looking at the very best international practice in legal education and drawing on what's been happening around the world to build what we think is going to be another new higher standard for teaching law in Australian law schools. The new curriculum will focus on some of the key developments in law, the shift towards regulation rather than case law, towards dispute resolution rather than litigation, and crucially, towards globalization. This is one of the strongest characteristics of the new curriculum, that it's going to reflect the new international dimensions which anybody who studies law or works in the law in the future has to be familiar with. So we will have a new compulsory course on global perspectives in law, and we will be introducing and expanding more and more international opportunities for our students to go to study law overseas. And the head of school, Carolyn Penfold, will talk in a bit more detail about those soon. A second vital characteristic of the new curriculum is that it's going to be structured in a very distinctive way. Like any curriculum, it's going to be divided up by courses. So you do criminal law, contract law, tort law, and so on. But it's also going to be divided across another dimension by a series of themes which will run through all the courses that you do. Themes like social justice, ethics and values, and skills. The third vital part of the new curriculum is about how we teach it. Now, many of you, I think, were here a little earlier to hear about the out-of-classroom teaching which the law school is doing. And again, Carolyn will talk more about it in a minute. But just in general terms, the crucial thing that we are doing is moving towards teaching not simply by sitting in classrooms, but by giving students an opportunity to learn through seeing the law working in practice, through internships, through clinics, through all kinds of opportunities to work in the real world of law. The outcome of this, the result of what we do here, is to produce a particular kind of person, the UNSW lawyer. And employers tell me, as I go around speaking to them, that there are distinctive characteristics of our graduates, the characteristics on the slide behind me. We produce people who have the breadth and the flexibility which is so essential for being in the modern workforce. You note there, I didn't say being a lawyer. If you're not sure about whether you want to be a lawyer or not at this stage, you shouldn't worry about that. At least half of the graduates of this law school go on to work outside the legal profession. And they work in an enormous variety of professions and jobs, from government to journalism to the arts to the community sector and to business. And why law is such a good training for people who are doing those, if you like, non-legal types of jobs is that the skills that you get through doing a law degree, particularly the ones of problem solving, communication, and having strong values, are ones which are transferable to any part of the workforce. UNSW law graduates are people who go out of here and get jobs, and if they want them, get very, very well-paid jobs. More important for me is that what we do is to produce people who can work anywhere and who may well work in different sectors. We produce people who've got the skills and the abilities to work in a community legal centre, or a big commercial law firm, or an international business, or in government. And indeed, many people work in several of those. One of the characteristics of the modern workforce is that people are likely to work in more than one job in the course of their life. Let's go on to put a bit of flesh onto those bones by talking about some real-life examples. On the pictures behind me, you get some examples of alumni of this law school. These are people who I've picked out not just because they're stars in their particular fields, but they're people who've got the characteristics that I've mentioned, people who see their work as being part of a broader responsibility of community engagement, and people who very often have worked in a number of different fields. Going clockwise from top left, the lady in the leather jacket is a federal court judge. That means she's a judge in the second top tier of the Australian legal system. Annabel Bennett, particularly interesting person who also has a PhD in biochemistry. Below her, Amrita Kapoor, extraordinary young woman who has worked in NGOs, in work to do with gender violence and the international criminal justice system in Mozambique, Tanzania, East Timor, North America, and several other places. And if you're lucky, in a couple of years' time, you may well be having her as one of your teachers here. She's just taken a job with us, which I'm really delighted about. Sitting next to her, from one of our youngest graduates to one of our oldest, David Gonski, known as the most influential businessman in this country, chancellor of this university, and somebody who combines work as at the very, very top of the business community with a constant concern to pay back to the community by engagement of many, many kinds. Next to him, another one, Shamara Wickremaniaki, another extraordinary person. She's head of one of the divisions at Macquarie Bank. I was looking at the website before. She got paid last year a measly $7.63 million. But what Shamara does with some of that money is to run a foundation for students in developing countries to go to university. Next to her, the guys in the funny hats. They're in funny hats because they're like a number of our best students. They go to do master's degrees in North America, these three at Columbia. And the guy in the middle, Adam Hockroth, is a great example of the flexible UNSW graduate. Somebody who, when the last time I saw him, he was doing his master's at Columbia after having worked at Freehills, one of the top firms in this country. While working in commercial litigation, he was also working in a community legal centre dealing with youth legal issues in Western Sydney. Above him, Stuart Fuller, the global managing partner of Kingwood Mallisons. He is the person who has led Mallisons, again one of the top law firms in this country, into a major international new dimension by linking up with a top Chinese law firm. Above him, Dorji Sun, another extraordinary guy who I taught a number of years ago, who made a load of money out of the dot-com revolution and now uses that basis as a climate change entrepreneur, if you like. He's responsible for having saved the largest orangutan sanctuary in Indonesia by stopping it from being burnt down by doing a carbon deal. In the middle at the top, Elizabeth Broderick, who went from being a partner at a major law firm to being the Sex Discrimination Commissioner at the Australian Human Rights Commission. The last two, the man, Alan Rassaby, somebody who I just caught up with again recently in North America, a man who went from being a partner at a law firm to being Commissioner of the Victorian Law Reform Commission working in intellectual disability law, and then went from there to being legal counsel of a software company in the United States. And finally, the youngest one there, Trina Ung, who's a graduate of here a couple of years ago, went from here to NYU to do her master's, now works in commercial arbitration in New York City in a top law firm. A couple of things about Trina worth mentioning. She's somebody who, when she started here, she was absolutely set on a career. She was going to go into finance. And she ended up going through a whole series of changes of learning while she was here what else was available, and is now in a completely different field from where she started. The second thing about her is that she exemplifies what is available as a UNSW law student these days. When I went to university in England a million years ago, we used to just sit, actually bigger lecture theatres than this, and write down notes which we were given from our lectures. Nowadays, our students, if they're in classrooms, they're in the small classrooms you've seen outside, but you also have the opportunities to study in multiple ways outside. And so Trina's last 5 courses at this law school, all of which were for course credit, were being editor of our law journal, secondly, working on internships to set up human rights clinics in Southeast Asian human rights organizations. She went on an exchange to Mannheim in Germany. She was in the Vismut, which the finals were held at Vienna. Many of you heard Justin talking about that program just before. And then finally, she did an internship at the International Court of Arbitration in The Hague. And that's the sort of thing that our students are now able to do. Studying law is a completely different world from what it used to be. And studying law at UNSW is going to, with our new curriculum, is just going to go on getting better. Thank you very much, and I look forward to meeting many of you outside.